I hadn't heard my father's voice in 18 months. This morning it came through static. The voicemail was short, blunt, even for him. "It's about your sister. She's gone." That was all. No hello, no explanation, not even my name. Just that one sentence like a rock dropped in still water. There were 14 missed calls, 11 from my mother, 2 from Olivia, 1 from the man who hadn't looked me in the eye the night I left. I didn't answer any of them. I played the voicemail once, then once more softer, as if the words might change if I gave them space. They didn't. My phone lay on the counter screen, still glowing. I stood there in my apartment, the upstairs room above Murphy's Hardware where I've been working since they erased me. Morning light slid across the floorboards, catching on a coffee cup I hadn't rinsed. The kind of silence that holds its breath. I didn't move. Not right away. I thought about my mother, Susan Thompson, the kind of woman who irons cloth napkins for Sunday dinner, but hasn't called me since the day I said something she didn't want to hear. She would be pacing, maybe crying, but mostly calculating how to pull the family back together before the neighbors notice something's broken. I imagined Olivia, too, my older sister, always good at falling apart just enough to be forgiven. Maybe she had left. Maybe she hadn't. Maybe this time the mask had slipped too far. But none of that explained the calls because when I walked out of their lives, they didn't leave space for a return. They never called to ask where I was staying, never asked if I needed help, not even on my birthday. And now, after all that silence, they were calling 14 times before breakfast. I reached for my phone again, but didn't unlock it. I looked at my own reflection in the black screen, tired, still, my hair pinned back like my mother used to do when I was 12. She said it made me look decent. Back then, I used to think decent was a kind of praise. Now I know it just means invisible enough to keep the peace. The phone buzzed once more. I let it ring because I wasn't ready to hear what they needed. Not when they'd never asked what I'd lost. It was a Thursday night, but the house looked like Sunday. The dining table had the good dishes laid out, the ones with the silver rims we only used for holidays. There was pot roast too dry, a bottle of wine breathing in the center, cloth napkins folded into triangles. Olivia had done those. She always said presentation mattered. I arrived 5 minutes early. I always did. Susan Thompson. My mother wore navy. No apron, no earrings, just a string of pearls that never left her skin. She greeted me with a tight nod, then walked into the kitchen without a word. The roast needed checking, she said, though it had already been out of the oven for 10 minutes. David Thompson. My father sat at the end of the table, elbows not touching the surface, reading the local paper. He didn't fold the paper down when I entered. He never did. Olivia arrived last, of course, her hair curled, lipstick perfect eyes already damp with preloaded emotion. We sat for a few minutes. We made a show of normal. Asked about traffic, the weather, something about the new strip mall in downtown Willow Creek. Then Mom folded her napkin in half and set it beside her plate. "I heard," she said. "No one asked what." We all knew. I had found the invoices 3 days earlier. Double payments, inflated contracts, a forged signature that almost but not quite matched the office assistant. I didn't go to the police. I didn't even go to Olivia. I went to my mother. I thought she would want to fix it quietly for Dad for the business. Instead, she called this dinner. "I heard," she said again, "and I need to ask what exactly you thought you were doing." Olivia's fork clinked against her plate. Dad turned a page of his paper without looking up. I tried to keep my voice steady. "I didn't report anything. I just thought we should." "No," Mom interrupted, her voice still calm. "You didn't report anything yet." She smoothed the tablecloth with one hand. "Do you have any idea what this would do to your father's name? To this family?" She looked at me then, not angry, not even disappointed, just assessing. Olivia shifted in her seat. She didn't cry yet. She didn't need to. She had Mom's voice to do it for her. "I wasn't trying to expose anyone," I said. You just embarrassed your sister in front of the board." Mom cut in. "That wasn't my intention, but that was the result." I looked at my father. He was watching the article on page B6 like it might dissolve if he blinked. I waited. He didn't speak. The silence in the room was heavy and clean like a kitchen right after bleach. Then Mom said the sentence that stayed with me longer than any scream could have. If you can't keep this in the family, you are not family. I didn't cry. I didn't shout. I didn't explain. I folded my napkin, laid it on the plate, and stood. No one stopped me. No one called my name. I walked out through the front door, the one with the brass handle I polished every Thanksgiving. I heard it close behind me. That was all. That was the last time I saw that house. Not because I couldn't go back, but because I finally understood it had never really been mine. Before that dinner, before the invoices, before my name was quietly erased, there were years of staying. Not just staying quiet, staying present, staying useful. I was the one who picked up Dad's prescriptions after his knee replacement when Olivia forgot twice. I drove him to physical therapy on Mondays and Thursdays, even when I had to leave work early to do it. He never said thank you, but he did grunt once, which for him was nearly sentimental. I cleaned out the garage every spring, not because anyone asked, but because no one else would. I made dinner most Sundays. Mom would say she was tired that her back had been acting up or that the oven wasn't heating right again. So I'd bring over roast, chicken, or a casserole, something easy, and watch her criticize the salt level. Anyway, Olivia didn't cook. She'd arrive late with wine and a new story about someone she knew from yoga or real estate. She'd toss her coat over the banister and kiss the top of Mom's head like a woman in a commercial. I usually did the dishes while they laughed in the other room. When Olivia's son Ethan had strep throat last fall, I left work to pick him up from school. I stayed with him until after midnight. Even though Olivia said she'd be home by 7, she never called. I just waited, made him toast, found an old Looney Tunes DVD he liked. The next morning, Olivia sent a text. "Thanks for helping out. You're a lifesaver." No heart emoji, no follow-up, nothing since. Sometimes I wondered if she even remembered that night. Sometimes I wondered if any of them did. The family business Thompson and Ellis Builders was supposed to belong to both of us one day. That's what Dad used to say. "Your grandfather built this from nothing, he told us. One day, it'll be yours to carry." But when I asked it to sit in on quarterly meetings, I was told the room was full. When I brought in a small-town architect for a sustainable housing project, I was told it wasn't aligned with our image. Olivia once brought in a landscape artist she met at a winery, and suddenly we had an overpriced brochure and a redesigned website. No one asked what I thought. They just asked me to send the invoices. I was the one who processed payroll, who knew every vendor's daughter's name, who stayed late when it snowed because the cleaning crew couldn't make it. And still, somehow, I was always the one being told to stay in the background to let Olivia handle the client-facing stuff because I was better with numbers. That's how it always was. Do the work, stay useful, be invisible, except once. One Thursday, after a particularly messy winter storm, I stayed late to help the janitorial staff clear a salt spill in the loading area. My hands were raw, the air stung like citrus. I was wearing one of Olivia's old scarves. She'd left it in the office 3 months ago, never asked for it back. As I hauled the mop bucket back in the older woman who cleaned our offices, Evelyn stopped me. She looked at me for a long second, then said, "You're the one who stays behind. That was all. No flowers, no bonus, no praise in the company newsletter. Just those 6 words said quietly like a truth no one else wanted to say out loud. And I still remember them, because sometimes I think if even the cleaning lady saw me, why didn't they? It started with a spreadsheet. Quarterly numbers didn't match vendor invoices. I thought it was a rounding error at first, maybe a duplicated payment. But the deeper I looked, the more it unraveled. Fake contractors, inflated material costs, a signature that mimicked one of our temp assistants close, but off by one loop in the G. The paper trail led back to one name, Olivia. She wasn't clever about it, just confident that no one would ever question her. I printed everything, placed it in a plain manila folder, and took it home. Sat on my apartment floor with a yellow highlighter circling everything twice. I didn't sleep that night. By morning, I knew what I was going to do. Not report it, not go to the board, just tell my mother. I still believed that Susan Thompson, with all her pride and pearls and posture, would want to protect the name more than protect the mess. I was wrong. When I showed her the folder, she didn't even touch it. She listened in silence, standing by the kitchen sink with her arms crossed over her apron like a shield. Then she said, "We'll take care of it." That was all. She didn't ask for copies, didn't question the numbers, didn't deny that Olivia's name was on the checks. She just said it like a closing argument. I left the folder on the counter untouched. The next morning, I arrived at the office, scanned my badge. Nothing happened. I tried again. A red light blinked. The door stayed locked. I called Evelyn. She buzzed me in from the back, said the system had probably glitched, but my computer login didn't work either. My name was gone from the employee portal. My email returned undeliverable. A new girl sat at the front desk smiling, asking if I had an appointment. No one said anything. Not my father, not Olivia, not HR. They didn't fire me. They just erased me like a typo in a family scrapbook. I walked out without saying a word, just like I had at that dinner table, just like they expected me to. That night, I checked my phone twice. Not because I expected an apology, but I thought maybe someone might want to explain. They didn't. No missed calls, no voicemails, no messages asking what I'd found, what it meant, what I wanted. Just silence. I kept the folder, not because I intended to use it. There's still a part of me even now that recoils at the idea of exposure. But I needed proof. Not for a court, for myself. Because when people decide you no longer exist, it helps to hold something real in your hands. Something that says you were here. You saw it. You weren't wrong. I didn't hear from them after that until this morning. Now they're calling again and again, and I have to wonder, is it guilt that brought them back? Or is Olivia in deeper than even I imagined? The silence didn't feel sharp at first. It crept in like cold through old window panes, slow, certain, and hard to notice until it settled into your bones. I moved out of my apartment over the bakery downtown, took a room above Murphy's Hardware instead. It was smaller, but the rent was clean, and the landlord minded his own business. I liked that. My phone stayed mostly quiet. The only regular notifications were pharmacy reminders and promotional emails from stores I no longer shopped at. No birthdays were missed because no one remembered mine. No holidays ruined because no one invited me. Just clean, unbroken silence. I kept busy. Work at Murphy's was simple. Shelves to restock customers to help deliveries to sign. I started learning the names of screws, the different kinds of lumber. There was comfort in things that did what they said they'd do. Every Wednesday night, I made pasta, a habit I couldn't shake. I still cooked like someone might show up. No one ever did. Olivia's scarf hung behind my door, same one I wore when Evelyn thanked me. I thought about returning it once months ago, folded it neatly, placed it in a small box. Even wrote her name on the corner in pencil like she might forget it was hers. I picked up my phone that night, found her contact, stared at it, and then I didn't call. I turned off the lamp, slid the box back under my bed. Olivia hadn't asked for the scarf. I figured she wouldn't miss it. Maybe that's what made it easier to hold on to. There were moments, quiet, forgettable ones, when I almost reached out. When I read a headline Dad would have argued with when I passed the church. Mom still volunteers at the same hydrangeas still blooming by the side door. But every time something stopped me. Not anger, not even pride, just the memory of that red light blinking on the office door. The sound of my own name returning not found. That kind of silence doesn't just happen. It's built. And they built it very well. One night, as I folded laundry with the windows open, I heard a familiar voice on the sidewalk below. Someone from the Thompson and Ellis office laughing, chatting, living like nothing had changed. I didn't feel anything. Not really. Just a small, steady recognition that they had gone on. And so had I. But the difference was I hadn't pretended nothing broke. I just stopped expecting anyone to fix it. I woke to the sun slanting across the floorboards the same way it had every morning since I moved in. Light crawling through dusty blinds, catching on the same nick in the wood where I once dropped a box of bolts. I boiled water for tea, sat at the counter, scrolled past an email from the hardware distributor, a coupon for winter gloves, junk. Then I saw them. 14 missed calls, 11 from Mom, 2 from Olivia, 1 from Dad. I didn't panic. Not even curiosity came quickly. It was more like an old coat being pulled off a hook, familiar heavy, and not entirely welcome. I waited almost an hour before pressing play. "It's about your sister. She's gone." His voice was flat, not shaken. not broken, gone, not missing, not hurt, not specific, just gone. I replayed the message, leaned against the sink, watched the steam rise from my mug like something escaping. What did gone mean? Olivia had a way of disappearing without going far. Trips to Palm Springs that turned into 3 weeks, yoga retreats with no signal, men with second homes and no wives. But this wasn't from her. It was from them. From the people who had scrubbed me out of their photos, their dinners, their company's payroll. And now, suddenly, they needed me. Needed something. I didn't know what exactly, but I knew what it wasn't. It wasn't a real invitation. Not to return. Not to belong. Not to be seen. I looked at the scarf again, still hanging by the door, still untouched. For a second, I thought about packing it, dropping it off, sending a text. Found this, thought you might need it. But I didn't move because I knew the difference now between needing someone and needing someone to clean up the mess. They hadn't called because they missed me. They called because the person they protected had finally slipped too far. And for the first time, there was no one left to blame but themselves. I finished my tea, let the voicemail sit there. Then, without a second thought, I pressed delete. The voicemail was gone. The screen now blank, like it had never lit up with their names at all. I made tea again just for the warmth. The mug left a faint ring on the counter, which I wiped away without thinking. Then I walked to the drawer beside the bed, the one with the things I never fully unpacked. Inside, still sealed and untouched, was the manila folder. Olivia's invoices, the forged signatures, the spreadsheet I printed at midnight with my heart pounding like I was stealing from my own blood. For months, I kept it, not to use, not to threaten, just to know I hadn't imagined it, that I hadn't broken something that was already cracked. I flipped through the pages once more, slowly, like they might speak. They didn't. Not even paper can hold meaning forever. I fed them through the shredder, one by one, the whirring blades the only sound in the room. When I finished, I ran my hands along the empty folder, then folded it in half and dropped it in the trash. Not because they deserved my silence, but because I didn't need to hold their lies anymore. Next, I picked up my phone, blocked Olivia's number first, then Mom's, then Dad's. The screen prompted me. "Are you sure you want to block this contact?" I tapped yes 3 times each with the same stillness as pouring a glass of water. No rage, no relief, just done. Outside, the wind picked up, rattled the old window panes like it always did around this time of year. I pulled Olivia's scarf from the hook and held it once more. The fabric smelled like dust now. I placed it in the donation box by the door, folded neatly. No note. Let someone else find use in what was never really mine to begin with. By noon, the apartment was quieter than usual, not silent, just finally at peace. They could keep the dinners, the name, the version of events they'd rehearsed for anyone who asked, but they couldn't keep the story whole without me. And I'd decided I would no longer be their missing piece. I didn't leave with a fight. I left with silence. And silence, I've learned, is not the absence of noise. It's the absence of permission, the refusal to explain, the final word without saying one. They might tell the story differently now. Say I was overreacting. Say I ran. Say I never understood how family works. But stories need all their characters to stand. And I've stepped out of the frame. I didn't leave quietly. I stayed quiet. And that was louder than they ever expected. If silence ever cost you everything, just leave a dot. Through this silence, I've learned that family isn't blood. It's the ones who see you, not erase you. Protecting lies erodes trust, but walking away rebuilds strength. I was the invisible pillar, yet they crumbled without me. Now I choose peace over pretense, holding my truth like a shield. Silence isn't weakness. It's the loudest declaration of self-worth. In letting go, I found freedom, proving that sometimes the best response is none at all.
I'd been invisible in this family for 29 years. The youngest of 3, the one who never quite measured up, the daughter who chose art school over business school, the disappointment who worked as a freelance graphic designer instead of joining Williams and Associates, our family's mid-sized manufacturing firm. My sister Jennifer was the golden child. MBA from Wharton, VP of Operations at 26, Dad's right hand, Mom's pride and joy. My brother Marcus ran the sales division, drove a Tesla, lived in a penthouse downtown. They wore designer suits to family dinners. I wore thrift store cardigans and had paint under my fingernails. Sarah's doing her little art projects again, Jennifer would say at Thanksgiving, her voice dripping with condescension. How charming. Mom would smile tightly. Well, not everyone is cut out for real business. Dad barely looked at me anymore. I'd stopped being relevant to him the day I turned down his offer to work in the mailroom. Start at the bottom, work your way up, he'd said. I'd chosen a scholarship to an art institute instead. He'd called it throwing away your future. What they didn't know, what none of them knew, was that I'd been working 3 jobs through art school. Freelance design by day, coding websites at night, learning investment strategies in every spare moment. While they were building their careers inside Dad's company, I was building something else entirely. By 23, I'd saved $50,000. I started investing. Small positions at first, learning the markets, making mistakes, recovering. I discovered I had a talent for reading financial statements, for seeing value where others saw risk. My portfolio grew. By 25, I had $200,000. By 27, $1.2 million. And then I'd done something they never suspected. I'd started buying shares of Williams & Associates. The company had gone partially public 5 years ago when Dad needed capital for expansion. He'd retained 40% ownership, Jennifer had 12%, Marcus had 8%. The remaining 40% was split among various investors and employees. Dad thought he maintained control. He was wrong. I'd spent 2 years quietly acquiring shares through shell corporations and investment vehicles. Different names, different entities, all leading back to me. I'd bought out retiring employees, purchased from frustrated investors, accumulated position after position. I'd spent nearly $80 million total leveraging my returns, taking calculated risks. Now I own 78% of Williams & Associates. My father owned 40%. I own nearly double his stake. I controlled the company completely. And they had absolutely no idea. The Christmas board meeting was Jennifer's idea. A family business update, she'd called it, scheduling it for December 23rd, right before the holiday break. Just the core family, she'd specified. Decision makers only. I'd arrived in my usual jeans and sweater, carrying my laptop bag. Jennifer had looked me up and down. Sarah, what are you doing here? You said family meeting, I'd replied calmly. Family business meeting, Marcus corrected, adjusting his Rolex. You're not part of the business. I'm part of the family. Dad had sighed from the head of the conference table. Let her stay. She can take notes or something. So I'd sat in the corner, opened my laptop, and started typing while they discussed Q4 projections, expansion plans, and a major acquisition they were considering. A $50 million purchase of a competing manufacturer that would position Williams & Associates as the regional market leader. This is the big one, Jennifer had said, her eyes bright with ambition. This puts us on the map. National recognition. Maybe even international opportunities. The financing is tricky, Dad admitted. We'll need to leverage our credit lines, bring in additional investors. Marcus, you'll need to court the venture capital firms. Already on it, Marcus said confidently. I've got meetings scheduled with 3 firms next week. Jennifer had pulled up a presentation on the main screen. Growth projections. Market share estimates. Revenue forecasts. It was impressive work. She was good at her job, I'd never denied that. But she was also cruel in ways that Dad never noticed. Of course, this is confidential, Jennifer had said, glancing at me. Family only. She'd emphasized the word family, in a way that clearly excluded me. I'd continued typing. Actually, Jennifer had said, her voice taking on that particular edge I knew so well. Sarah, maybe you should step out for this part. This is sensitive business information. I'd looked up. I'm family. You're not part of the business, she'd repeated. You've made that very clear over the years. You chose your little creative career over this company. You can't have it both ways. Marcus had nodded. She's right. This is for stakeholders only. Stakeholders, I'd repeated quietly. People with actual investment in the company's success, Jennifer had explained slowly as if I were a child. People who've dedicated their careers to building this business. Not people who paint. I do graphic design. Whatever. She'd waved her hand dismissively. The point is, you'll never be part of this company. You made your choice. This is for successful people. Dad had nodded his agreement. Jennifer's right, Sarah. This isn't personal. It's just business protocol. You understand. That's when my phone had buzzed. A message from Catherine Chin, my investment advisor at Hartwell Capital Management. The firm that managed my portfolio. The firm that held my controlling interest in Williams & Associates under various legal entities. The preview on my screen read, Ms. Williams, your $94 million controlling shares are ready for liquidation if you choose to proceed. Board documentation prepared. Awaiting your instruction. I'd stared at the message for a long moment. 29 years of dismissal. 29 years of being told I wasn't good enough, wasn't serious enough, wasn't part of the real family. 29 years of watching Jennifer receive praise for achievements I could have matched if anyone had believed in me. The acquisition they were planning would be transformative for the company. It was a smart move. Jennifer's analysis was solid. But they'd need every dollar of credit, every investor relationship, every bit of financial stability to pull it off. And I could end it with a single phone call. Sarah. Jennifer's voice cut through my thoughts. Did you hear me? We need the room. I'd looked up at her. Then at Marcus, smirking beside her. Then at Dad, who couldn't even meet my eyes. Actually, I'd said calmly, I think I'll stay. Jennifer's expression had hardened. This isn't optional. Get out. I'm a stakeholder, I'd said quietly. Marcus had laughed. What, you bought one share so you could attend meetings? That's pathetic even for you. Not one share, I'd replied. 78% of them. The room had gone silent. What? Jennifer's voice was sharp. I turned my laptop around, showing the screen. Catherine's message. Below it, the portfolio summary. Williams & Associates Holdings. 78.3% ownership across multiple acquisition vehicles. Total investment, $79.4 million. Current value, $94.2 million. Dad had stood up, grabbing the laptop, his face going pale as he scrolled through the documents. This can't be real. It's real, I'd said. I've been acquiring shares for 2 years. Shell Corporation's investment trusts, strategic purchases. All legal. All documented. I control this company, Dad. I have since October. You. Jennifer's voice had risen. You can't afford. This is impossible. Where would you even get this kind of money? I earned it, I'd said simply. While you were working your way up Dad's corporate ladder, I was building my own portfolio. Tech investments mostly. Some real estate. I did well. Marcus had been staring at his phone, his face growing red. The shareholder registry. There are listings here for HCM Holdings, Westridge Capital, Pinnacle Investments. All mine, I'd confirmed. Different entities, same owner. Me. This is fraud, Jennifer had snapped. You can't just secretly buy up a company. It's completely legal, I'd interrupted. I filed all the proper documentation. The SEC has every required disclosure. You just never bothered to check who was behind the acquisition entities. Dad had sunk back into his chair. 78%. Which means I control the board, I'd said. I control major decisions. Including this acquisition you're planning. The implications had started to sink in. I watched it happen in real time, Jennifer's face going from red to white, Marcus's hand trembling as he set down his phone, Dad's eyes fixed on the table in front of him. The acquisition. Dad had started. Requires board approval, I'd finished. Which requires my approval. Since I hold the controlling interest. Jennifer had recovered first, her voice taking on a pleading tone I'd never heard from her before. Sarah, this acquisition is crucial. It's a game changer for the company. You saw the projections. This could transform everything. I did see them, I'd agreed. They're impressive. You've done good work. Then you'll approve it? Marcus had asked hopefully. I'd smiled slightly. You just told me I'll never be part of this company. That this is for successful people only. That I don't belong here. That was a misunderstanding, Jennifer had started. Was it? I'd asked. Because you've been saying versions of that for my entire life. At every family dinner, every holiday, every gathering. I'm the failure. The disappointment. The one who chose wrong. We didn't mean. You meant every word, I'd said calmly. And that's fine. You're entitled to your opinions. But you're not entitled to my money. Dad's phone had started ringing. He'd glanced at the screen, his face going even paler. It's Richard from First National. Our primary bank. You should probably answer that, I'd suggested. He'd stepped into the hallway. Through the glass conference room walls, I'd watched him talk, watched his expression shift from confusion to shock to something like panic. He'd come back in, his hand shaking slightly. They're calling our credit line, he'd said hoarsely. Richard says there's been a change in the shareholder structure that affects our debt covenants. They need to reassess our lending terms. That would be my acquisition, I'd said. Changes in controlling interest trigger covenant reviews. Standard banking practice. Jennifer's phone had buzzed. Then Marcus's. Both of them had looked at their screens, then at each other. The VC firms, Marcus had said. They're all backing out. They're saying there's uncertainty about company leadership. Word travels fast in investment circles, I'd observed. My own phone had rung. Catherine Chin. I'd answered on speaker. Ms. Williams, I'm getting calls from several parties interested in your Williams and Associates holdings. There are 3 firms wanting to discuss acquisition of your position. Shall I tell them you're open to offers? Not yet, I'd said. I'm still evaluating my options. Understood. Also, I have the paperwork ready if you want to call an emergency board meeting. As controlling shareholder, you have the right to remove and appoint board members at will. Thank you, Catherine. I'll let you know. I'd ended the call. 3 sets of eyes had been staring at me. You're going to destroy the company, Jennifer had whispered. Everything Dad built. Everything we've worked for. I'm not going to destroy anything, I'd said. I'm going to make a business decision. The same way you've been making business decisions. The same way you decided I wasn't worth including. Sarah, please, Dad had started. Let me ask you something, I'd interrupted. If I had walked in here 2 years ago and said I wanted to invest in the company, wanted to be part of the business, what would you have said? Silence. Would you have taken me seriously? Would you have accepted my money? Or would you have laughed and told me to stick to my art projects? More silence. That's what I thought, I'd said quietly. So I didn't ask. I just did it. I built my own success, made my own money, and bought my way in. Because that's the only language you understand. Power. Money. Control. Marcus had tried a different approach. Look, we were wrong. We should have respected your choices. But this acquisition, it's not just about us. It's about the 200 employees counting on this company. It's about the community. The legacy. Don't, I'd said sharply. Don't try to guilt me with the employees. Where was your concern for people when you mocked my career? When you told everyone at Thanksgiving that I was wasting my life? His mouth had closed. My phone had buzzed again. Another message from Catherine. Reuters is reporting unusual trading activity in Williams and Associates shares. Expect media inquiries. Dad had seen it. Media. A $94 million position in a mid-sized manufacturing firm? I'd said. That's newsworthy. Especially when the controlling shareholder is the owner's daughter who was supposedly estranged from the business. Jennifer had stood up abruptly. What do you want? Money? Is this about money? We can arrange a buyout. We can find investors to purchase your position at a premium. With what capital? I'd asked. Your credit lines are being reviewed. Your VC partners are backing out. Your acquisition is stalled. Where exactly are you going to find $100 million to buy me out? We'll find it, she'd insisted desperately. Maybe you will, I'd agreed. But it'll take time. Months probably. Meanwhile, your acquisition target will move on to other buyers. Your market opportunity will close. Your expansion plans will collapse. Dad had finally spoken, his voice rough. What do you want, Sarah? I'd looked at him for a long moment. My father, who'd barely spoken to me in 5 years. Who'd written me off as a failure, a disappointment, a waste of potential. I want respect, I'd said simply. I want to be treated like a member of this family, not an embarrassment you tolerate at holidays. I want acknowledgement that I'm successful too, just in a different way than you planned. Done, Jennifer had said immediately. Absolutely. We respect you. We always have. Don't lie, I'd cut her off. Not now. You didn't respect me. You don't respect me. You respect my money. There's a difference. My phone had rung again. This time it was a number I didn't recognize. I'd answered. Ms. Williams? This is David Stanton from the Wall Street Journal. I'm writing a piece about your acquisition of Williams and Associates. Can you comment on your plans for the company? I'd put the phone on speaker. I'm still evaluating my options, Mr. Stanton. There's speculation you might liquidate your position or force a sale of the company. Can you address those rumors? No comment at this time. What about the relationship with your family? Sources say there's been tension between you and the existing management team. I'd looked directly at Jennifer. I'd say that's an accurate characterization. Are you planning to replace the current leadership? As controlling shareholder, I have many options available. I'll be making decisions that serve the best interests of the company and its shareholders. Including yourself. Including myself, I'd agreed and ended the call. Jennifer had looked like she might be sick. The Wall Street Journal? This is going to be everywhere. Everyone will know. That you treated your sister like garbage and it backfired spectacularly? I'd finished. Yes. They probably will. Dad's phone had rung again. Then Jennifer's. Then Marcus's. All of them had stared at their screens but none had answered. That'll be the board members, I'd said. The ones who aren't family. They're probably wondering what's happening to their investments. You're really going to burn it all down, Marcus had said bitterly. Just to prove a point. I'm not burning anything down, I'd corrected. I'm making you understand something you should have learned years ago. I'm not less than you. I never was. I just chose a different path. And it turns out my path was more successful than yours. Catherine had called again. I'd answered. Ms. Williams, I have the CEO of Hartwell Capital on the other line. He'd like to speak with you about your holdings. Also, I'm receiving inquiries from 3 major investment banks about potential leveraged buyout scenarios. And, this is significant, I just got a call from Malcolm Chin at Sterling Ventures. He represents a consortium interested in acquiring Williams and Associates entirely. They're offering $180 million. The room had gone completely silent. That's above market value, I'd observed. Significantly. They see the acquisition opportunity you were discussing. They want to complete that deal themselves and consolidate the market position. With their capital, they could execute immediately. What would that mean for existing management? Typically, complete restructure. New leadership team. Current executives would likely be offered severance packages. I'd looked at my family. Dad's face was ashen. Jennifer looked like she was going to cry. Marcus was staring at nothing, his jaw clenched. Thank you, Catherine. I'll consider it. They need an answer by end of day tomorrow. This is a time-sensitive opportunity. Understood. I'd ended the call and stood up. I'm going to go now. You all have a lot to think about. So do I. Sarah, wait, Dad had started. I'll let you know my decision, I'd said. About the acquisition. About the company. About everything. But I'm going to think about it on my own terms, not yours. This is our lives, Jennifer had said, her voice breaking. Our careers. Everything we've built. Yes, I'd agreed. It is. Just like my career was my life and you spent years telling me it didn't matter. That I didn't matter. That I'd never be successful, never be part of this family's real legacy. We were wrong, Dad had said quietly. Sarah, we were wrong. I'd paused at the door. Yes. You were. And now you're going to find out what being wrong costs. I'd walked out, leaving them in the conference room. By the time I'd reached my car, my phone was exploding with calls. Investment firms. Media outlets. Business reporters. The board members. Family friends. Everyone suddenly very interested in Sarah Williams, the overlooked daughter who turned out to own everything. I'd driven to my small apartment. Not penthouse, not mansion, just a modest one-bedroom in a decent neighborhood, and sat on my couch. My laptop was open, showing real-time updates. Williams and Associates stock price was fluctuating wildly on the private markets. News articles were already being published. Secret shareholder revealed in family business drama. Estranged daughter controls manufacturing firm. Williams and Associates in turmoil as hidden majority owner emerges. My phone rang. Mom this time. Sarah? What's happening? Jennifer called me crying. She says you're going to sell the company? Your father's life work. I might, I'd said calmly. How could you? How could you do this to your family? How could I? I'd repeated. Mom, do you remember my art school graduation? You didn't come. You said it wasn't worth taking time off work. But you took a week off for Jennifer's MBA graduation. Do you remember my 30th birthday? I invited everyone for dinner. No one came. You all had a family business dinner that I wasn't invited to. On my birthday. That's different. It's not different. It's the same pattern over and over for my entire adult life. I wasn't worth your time unless I was doing what you wanted me to do. So I stopped asking for your time. I built my own life. And it turned out to be more successful than you ever imagined. So this is revenge. You're going to destroy everything your father built because we hurt your feelings. No, Mom. This isn't revenge. Revenge would be destroying it. I'm considering my options as a businesswoman with a $94 million investment. That's what successful people do, right? Make hard business decisions. She'd been silent. I'll let you know what I decide, I'd said and ended the call. The next 24 hours were chaos. The story had gone national. Forbes picked it up. Bloomberg covered it. My inbox was flooded with interview requests, investment proposals, and messages from people I hadn't heard from in years. The Sterling Ventures offer was real. $180 million for the entire company. They'd restructure, complete the acquisition that Jennifer had planned, and build the empire my family had dreamed of. Just without my family running it. I'd sat in my apartment looking at the offer, thinking about everything. 29 years of being dismissed. Years of watching my siblings receive praise I never got. Years of family dinners where my accomplishments were charming, while theirs were impressive. But I also thought about the 200 employees. The real people whose lives depended on the company. The legacy that, despite everything my father had built from nothing. The fact that Jennifer's acquisition plan really was smart and Marcus's sales strategy really was working, and the company really did have potential. And I thought about who I wanted to be. Did I want to be the person who burned it all down? Or did I want to be better than they'd been to me? On December 24th at 4:47 p.m., I'd called Catherine Chin. I'm not selling, I'd said. You're keeping your position? I'm keeping my position. And I'm approving Jennifer's acquisition. But I'm restructuring the board. I want a seat. Not as silent investor but as active board member. I want quarterly meetings where I'm treated as the controlling shareholder I am. And I want company bylaws updated to reflect reality. Consider it done. Anything else? Yes. I want a formal apology from the executive team. In writing. Delivered to every board member and every department head. Acknowledging that they failed to respect a major shareholder and outlining steps to improve company culture. That's unusual. So is buying 78% of your family's company without them noticing, I'd said. Draft the documents. I'd sent the message to Dad's phone. Acquisition approved. Board restructure to follow. Check your email for terms. He'd called immediately. Sarah, you're approving it? You're not selling. I'm not selling. But things are going to change, Dad. I'm not the invisible daughter anymore. I'm the majority shareholder. And you're all going to treat me accordingly. Yes. Absolutely. Thank you. Sarah, I don't know what to say. Start with the apology letter, I'd said. Make it good. You've got a lot to apologize for. The acquisition had gone through. Williams and Associates had completed the purchase of their competitor, expanded their market position and secured the financing they needed. Because banks and investors were a lot more confident when they knew the controlling shareholder was a woman who'd turned $50,000 into $94 million. The business press had loved the story. The hidden genius of Sarah Williams. How one woman outsmarted her family's business empire. Underestimated daughter becomes controlling shareholder. At the next board meeting in January, I'd sat at the table. Not in the corner taking notes but in a board seat with my nameplate and my voting authority displayed clearly on the agenda. Jennifer had been polite. Professionally polite. Marcus had been respectful. Dad had been different. Quieter. More thoughtful. Less dismissive. Before we begin, Dad had said, I want to formally acknowledge Sarah Williams as our controlling shareholder and welcome her to the board. We're grateful for her support of our expansion and look forward to her guidance going forward. It wasn't the emotional apology I might have wanted years ago. But it was acknowledgement. It was respect. And it was real. After the meeting, Dad had caught me in the hallway. "Sarah, can we talk?" I'd stopped, waited. "I owe you more than what I said in there," he'd said quietly. "I owe you an actual apology. Not a corporate statement. A father's apology." "Okay. I underestimated you. For years. I thought because you didn't choose my path you weren't successful. I was wrong. You're more successful than any of us. You're smarter than I gave you credit for. And you're a better person than I've been to you." I'd felt something loosen in my chest. "Thank you. I'd like to try again," he'd said. "If you'll let me. Not as chairman to shareholder. As father to daughter." I'd looked at him for a long moment. "That's going to take time. I understand. But I'm willing to try." He'd nodded, his eyes bright. "That's more than I deserve." I'd walked out of that building as a different person than I'd walked in. Not because I'd gotten revenge. Not because I'd destroyed anything. But because I'd proven, to them and to myself, that I was exactly as capable, as intelligent, and as successful as I'd always known I could be. They just needed $94 million worth of proof to see it. The first time I showed my family the beach house I was 26. I'd just purchased it. A 1960s mid-century modern perched on 2 acres of prime beachfront property in Malibu. Paid $840,000 for it, which was every dollar I'd saved working 80-hour weeks as a junior architect at a prestigious firm in Los Angeles. The seller was elderly, wanted a quick sale, and I'd gotten lucky with timing. The house was original everything. Wood paneling. Vintage fixtures. Terrazzo floors that hadn't been touched since 1967. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Pacific. The bones were incredible, but aesthetically, it was a time capsule. My sister Vanessa took one look and laughed. "You paid how much for this?" $840,000. For this. She gestured at the wood-paneled walls, the vintage kitchen with turquoise cabinets. "Rachel, this is a teardown. You got scammed." Mom walked through slowly, her face pinched. "Honey, I don't understand. Why would you buy something so dated?" "The architecture is significant," I explained. "It's a documented example of mid-century coastal modernism. And the location. The location is the only thing this place has going for it," Vanessa interrupted. "Everything inside is worthless. You'd have to gut it completely." Dad examined the vintage light fixtures. "These don't even work properly. How much will renovations cost?" "I'm not renovating," I said. "I'm restoring. There's a difference." Vanessa snorted. "Sure, Rachel. Throw good money after bad. This is why you're still single. Terrible decision-making." They left after 20 minutes. Didn't stay for the sunset I'd been excited to show them. Didn't appreciate the original Eames chairs the seller had left behind. Didn't understand that I'd just purchased a piece of architectural history. That was 11 years ago. In that time I'd meticulously restored every inch of the property. Researched original materials. Tracked down period-appropriate fixtures. Hired specialists who understood mid-century preservation. Spent another $400,000 on the restoration alone, doing most of the project management myself while working full-time. I'd also built my career. Junior architect to senior architect to partner at one of LA's most prestigious firms. Specialized in historic preservation and sustainable design. Won awards. Got featured in Architectural Digest twice. My projects commanded premium fees. By 37, my annual income was $340,000. My net worth, including the beach house and investment portfolio, was around $8.2 million. My family still thought I was a struggling architect barely making rent. I never corrected them. Vanessa lived in Orange County with her husband Derek, a pharmaceutical sales rep. They had a nice house in a planned community. 3 kids. A boat they took out twice a year. They made comfortable money, combined income around $180,000, and spent every dollar of it maintaining their lifestyle. To them, I was the quirky sister who'd made bad choices. Never married. No kids. Living in that beach shack they'd seen once over a decade ago. They assumed I was house poor and career struggling. I let them assume. The truth was more complicated. After the restoration, my beach house had been appraised at $5.8 million. The property had become a documented example of mid-century preservation. Architecture students toured it. Design magazines featured it. I'd been offered $6.2 million for it twice. Turned down both offers. It wasn't just a house. It was my masterwork. My sanctuary. My proof that beautiful things were worth preserving. I'd also gotten smart about protection. After my neighbor's property got tangled in a family dispute, I'd moved all my assets into an LLC structure. The beach house was owned by Coastal Preservation Holdings, LLC. My name appeared nowhere on public records. Property tax bills went to my business manager. Everything ran through corporate entities. My family had no idea. The property had been sitting empty for the past 6 months while I worked on a major project in San Francisco. A historic renovation of a 1920s hotel that was taking all my time. I'd been staying in SF during the week, only coming back to LA on occasional weekends. I'd hired a property manager, Elena, to handle maintenance and security. She checked on the house twice weekly, managed the gardeners and cleaners, handled any issues. The house was in perfect condition, just temporarily unoccupied. Then I got Vanessa's text. I was in a client meeting in San Francisco when my phone buzzed. I glanced at it during a break. Vanessa, sold your beach shack for $200,000. You need the money. I stared at the message. Read it twice. 3 times. Before I could respond, Mom chimed in on the family group chat. Mom, good decision, it's falling apart anyway. Maybe now you can afford a real place. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. A dozen responses came to mind. Instead I typed, okay. That was at 2:47 p.m. At 3:03 p.m. Elena called. Ms. Rivera, we have a serious situation. I just received a call from a title company about a pending sale of the Malibu property. They're requesting documentation for a $200,000 transaction scheduled to close next week. My blood went cold. What transaction? Apparently someone claiming to be you has entered into a purchase agreement with a buyer. They've provided identification and are moving forward with the sale. The title company called me because they couldn't verify ownership. The LLC structure flagged in their system. Who's the seller? According to the title company, a woman named Vanessa Morrison presented herself as your representative with power of attorney. She claims you're overseas and unable to handle the transaction yourself. Vanessa Morrison. My sister's married name. Elena, I need you to do something for me immediately. Anything. Contact the title company. Inform them that any sale documentation is fraudulent. The property is not for sale and I have authorized no representatives. Then call our real estate attorney. This is attempted theft. I'm on it. Ms. Rivera, how did she even know about the property specifics? Good question. I hung up and called Vanessa. She answered on the second ring, her voice bright. Rachel, did you get my message? I know it seems fast, but Derek has a friend who's a real estate agent, and when I told him about your place, he said he had a buyer immediately. Cash offer, quick close. I figured you'd be relieved. How did you access the property? What do you mean? I still have the key you gave me years ago, remember? When you first bought it and wanted someone to check on it while you were working those crazy hours. I did remember. I'd completely forgotten about that key. Walk me through this, I said calmly. You took a buyer through my house? Well, yeah. Derek's friend brought his client last week. I met them there, showed them around. Rachel, I have to be honest. The place is worse than I remembered. Nothing's been updated. Still has all that weird old furniture and those outdated light fixtures. But the buyer loves the location and plans to tear it down and build new. He was willing to pay $200,000 for the teardown value and land. The teardown value and land, I repeated. Right. I mean, I know it's not much, but given the condition and the fact that you obviously can't afford to maintain it properly. What made you think you could sell my property? Oh, come on. I helped you. You've been struggling with this place for years. The property taxes alone must be killing you. I figured I'd spare you the embarrassment of having to list it and admit you couldn't afford it anymore. Did you sign any documents? Just the purchase agreement. Derek's friend walked me through it. We need your signature on the final paperwork by Friday. I told them you'd be grateful. I was still speaking calmly. Years of client meetings had taught me to control my voice even when everything inside was screaming. Vanessa, I need to be very clear. You don't have the authority to sell my property. Rachel, don't be stubborn. $200,000 is good money for that place. Take it and buy yourself a nice condo somewhere. Something you can actually afford to maintain. What did you tell the buyer about the property condition? The truth. That it's a 1960s fixer-upper that hasn't been touched in decades. Original everything all outdated. Needs complete renovation or tear down. The buyer's excited about the lot value. And what did you sign as? What do you mean? On the purchase agreement. What did you sign as? Your representative. Derek's friend said it was fine as long as we had your approval, which obviously you're giving now. I'm not giving approval. Silence. What? I'm not approving this sale. In fact, I'm informing you that you've just committed several felonies. Fraud, forgery, and attempted theft. Rachel, stop being dramatic. The property is worth $5.8 million. You tried to sell it for $200,000. That's theft. She laughed. That dump is not worth $5.8 million. Are you insane? The property was appraised at $5.8 million 14 months ago. I have documentation. It's a fully restored mid-century modern with documented architectural significance. It's been featured in Architectural Digest twice. I've turned down offers of $6.2 million. The line went quiet. You're lying. I'm not. And you've just attempted to illegally sell a multi-million-dollar property for $200,000. I'm contacting law enforcement. You can't. I was helping you. You were stealing from me. There's a difference. I hung up. My phone immediately started ringing. Then Mom. Then Dad. Then Derek. I declined all the calls and contacted my attorney. By 6 p.m. that evening, everything was in motion. The title company had been notified. The purchase agreement was voided. The buyer, who genuinely thought he was getting a teardown lot, was furious when he learned the actual value. Derek's real estate agent friend was facing license suspension for facilitating what he should have recognized as a fraudulent transaction. And my attorney had filed a police report for attempted theft and fraud. My phone continued buzzing. Family group chat exploding. Voicemails piling up. I ignored all of it and focused on documenting everything for law enforcement. That night I drove back to LA. Arrived at the beach house around midnight. Elena had arranged for a locksmith to change all the locks and install a security system upgrade. The house was exactly as I'd left it. Perfectly restored. Every detail immaculate. The vintage Noguchi lamps casting warm light across original terrazzo floors. The Eames chairs positioned to catch the ocean view. Glass walls overlooking private beach access worth millions by itself. This wasn't a shack. This was a documented masterpiece. And my sister had tried to sell it for $200,000. I slept in my own bed that night for the first time in weeks. Woke up to sunrise over the Pacific. Made coffee in my restored vintage kitchen. At 9 a.m. my attorney called. Rachel, the police want statements from everyone involved. Your sister is claiming she thought she had your permission. The buyer is threatening to sue everyone. And, this is important, your sister apparently showed the buyer a different property interior. What do you mean? The buyer described a rundown house with water damage, broken fixtures and structural issues. That's not what's in your property photos. She apparently took him through when it was dark, pointed out every flaw she could invent, and convinced him he was buying a teardown. So she committed fraud against the buyer too. Exactly. He's now an ally in the criminal case. He was defrauded as well. At 11 a.m., 2 detectives arrived at my house to take my statement. They walked through slowly, taking in every detail. The preserved architecture. The museum-quality furnishings. The clear evidence of professional restoration. Ms. Rivera, one detective said. This property is extraordinary. How did your sister think she could sell this for $200,000? She thought it was worthless, I said simply. She saw it once 11 years ago before restoration. He never came back. She assumed it was still a rundown shack. But didn't she see the interior when she brought the buyer through? According to my attorney, she brought him at dusk, used minimal lighting and apparently lied about structural damage and code violations. The buyer thought he was buying a teardown lot. She defrauded him as thoroughly as she tried to defraud me. The detectives documented everything. Took photos. Reviewed my ownership documentation and appraisals. This is one of the more clear-cut fraud cases I've seen, the second detective said. Attempted theft of a $5.8 million asset, fraudulent representation, forged authorization. She's looking at serious charges. After they left, I finally checked my family messages. 93 unread texts. Vanessa, you're overreacting, Vanessa. I was trying to help, Vanessa. You can't seriously press charges against your own sister, Vanessa. We're family. Mom, Rachel, call off the police, Mom. Vanessa made a mistake, Mom. She didn't know, Mom. You're being vindictive. Dad, this is getting out of hand. Dad, just accept the $200,000 and move on. Dad, why are you doing this to your sister? Derek, you've ruined our lives, Derek. Vanessa is being investigated by the police, Derek. All because you can't take help when it's offered. I read through all of them. Then I composed a single response to the family group chat. I'll address this once. Vanessa attempted to sell my property, worth $5.8 million, for $200,000 without my knowledge or consent. She forged authorization documents. She defrauded a buyer by misrepresenting the property condition. These are felonies. The legal process will continue. Don't contact me again about this. Mom called immediately. I declined. She called again. I declined. Text from Mom. At least tell us why you lied about the house being worthless. I responded, I never said it was worthless. You assumed. You saw it once 11 years ago before restoration. You never visited again. Never asked about it. Never showed any interest in my life or career. You assumed I was struggling because that fit your narrative. I built a career, restored a property, and achieved significant success. You just never bothered to notice. Vanessa, you let us think you were poor. Me, you wanted to think I was poor. Made you feel superior. I never confirmed or denied anything. You simply never asked. Dad, what are you, some kind of millionaire? I didn't respond to that one. Over the next week, the situation escalated. The buyer filed a civil suit against Vanessa and Derek's real estate agent friend for fraud. The real estate agent was suspended pending investigation. The title company flagged Derek's friend for multiple questionable transactions. The DA's office reviewed the case and decided to prosecute. Vanessa was charged with attempted grand theft, fraud, and forgery. Derek was investigated as a potential accomplice. His involvement in arranging the deal raised questions. My family's response was to blame me. Group chat messages I didn't respond to but couldn't help reading. Mom, you're sending your sister to prison. Dad, family doesn't do this to family. Vanessa, I have 3 kids, Rachel. How can you do this to them? Derek, we're going to lose everything because of your vindictiveness. My phone rang at odd hours. Unknown numbers. Probably relatives calling to tell me I was wrong. I blocked them all. One voicemail got through before I blocked the number. Aunt Carol, Mom's sister. Rachel, I don't know what's gotten into you. Vanessa made a mistake, sure, but prosecuting her? Making her lose everything? That's not the Rachel I know. Used to be sweet. Now you're cold and vindictive. Maybe money changed you. Maybe that fancy house made you forget where you came from. But family is supposed to matter more than property. Think about what you're doing. I saved the voicemail. Played it for my therapist the next week. What do you notice about the message? She asked. They think I'm the problem. What else? They think I changed. Became cold. But I'm just responding to theft. Do you think you've changed? I considered it. I think I stopped accepting their version of me. The struggling little sister. The one who makes bad decisions. The one who needs their help and pity. I never was that person, but they needed me to be. And now they're confronted with reality. And they're angry at me for it. The legal process continued. Vanessa hired an attorney who tried to argue she'd made an honest mistake. The evidence was overwhelming. Photos proved the property's condition. Appraisal documents proved the value. Testimony from the defrauded buyer proved the misrepresentation. Digital communications proved premeditation. 3 weeks after Vanessa's text, I got a call from the prosecutor. Ms. Rivera, Vanessa's attorney, is requesting a meeting. They want to discuss a potential resolution outside of criminal prosecution. What kind of resolution? Restitution. Apology. Admission of wrongdoing. In exchange, they're hoping you'll agree to request reduced charges. What do you recommend? Honestly, the evidence is solid. We can prosecute successfully. But if you're interested in preserving any family relationship, A negotiated resolution might achieve justice while avoiding a trial. I thought about it. Set up the meeting. The meeting took place in my attorney's conference room. Vanessa, Derek, their attorney. My attorney. The prosecutor observing. Vanessa looked terrible. Dark circles under her eyes. Hair pulled back messily. None of her usual polished appearance. Her attorney spoke first. My client deeply regrets her actions. She acknowledges that she made serious errors in judgment. She's prepared to offer a formal written apology and discuss restitution terms. Let's hear the apology, my attorney said. Vanessa's attorney nodded to her. Vanessa looked at me, eyes red. Rachel, I'm sorry. Thought I was helping. I know now that I wasn't. I was wrong to access your property, wrong to engage with a buyer, wrong to sign any documents. I violated your trust and your property rights. I'm sorry for the damage this has caused. It sounded rehearsed. Probably was. But she'd said the words. And the restitution? My attorney asked. My client is prepared to pay $50,000 over 5 years as symbolic restitution for. No, I said. Everyone looked at me. The actual damages exceed $50,000. Legal fees alone are over $30,000. The property was temporarily encumbered by a fraudulent claim, which delayed a legitimate rental opportunity worth $15,000 monthly. The emotional distress, the violation of privacy, the attempted theft of a $5.8 million asset. $50,000 over 5 years is insulting. Vanessa's attorney shifted. Ms. Rivera, my client doesn't have significant liquid assets. The $50,000 represents a genuine financial hardship. She tried to sell my house for $200,000. If she'd succeeded in stealing it, she would have profited. Now she can pay the actual cost of her crime. What are you asking for? The prosecutor asked. I'd thought about this carefully. Discussed it with my attorney and therapist. Full restitution of $150,000 for actual damages. Legal fees, lost rental income, security upgrades, and emotional distress. Payment schedule of $3,000 monthly until paid in full. Written admission of all criminal conduct. 5 years of probation with the condition that she has no contact with me or my property. Any violation of probation triggers immediate criminal prosecution with recommendation of maximum sentencing. Vanessa started crying. I don't have $3,000 a month. We have 3 kids, a mortgage. You have a boat, I said calmly. Sell it. You have country club membership. Cancel it. You have car payments on luxury vehicles. Downgrade. You attempted to steal $5.8 million from me. You can figure out how to pay $150,000. Derek spoke for the first time. This is vindictive. You're destroying our family's future. You tried to destroy mine, I said. You just didn't think I had a future worth destroying. The room went silent. Vanessa's attorney requested a recess to consult with his clients. They returned 40 minutes later and accepted the terms. Over the next 2 months, contracts were signed. Payments began. Vanessa and Derek sold their boat. Turned out it was worth $85,000. Derek took on overtime. Vanessa got a part-time job. They canceled their country club membership, downsized one of their cars, cut back on expenses. The $3,000 monthly payments started arriving. On time. Every month. I didn't spend the money. I set up a trust fund for Vanessa's 3 kids. My nieces and nephew I rarely saw. They'd get access when they turned 25. Maybe it would help them someday. But Vanessa and Derek didn't need to know that. 3 months after the resolution, I got a message from an unknown number. Just a photo. My beach house. Taken from the public beach access, showing the stunning architecture, the pristine restoration, the obvious luxury of the property. The message: saw this in Architectural Digest. Finally understand what you built. I'm sorry we never saw you. It was from Dad. I didn't respond. A week later, a letter arrived. Handwritten from Mom. Rachel, I've been thinking about what you said. That we never asked. That we assumed. You're right. We never visited after that first time. Never asked about your career. Never showed interest in your life. We wrote the story we wanted, that you were struggling, and never questioned if it was true. I don't expect forgiveness. But I want you to know I see now what we missed. And I'm sorry. I read the letter 3 times. Folded it carefully. Put it in a drawer. Maybe someday I'd respond. Maybe not. The truth was I'd built a beautiful life. Career I loved. A home that was a work of art. Financial security. Professional respect. Peace. I didn't need my family's validation anymore. I'd proven something more important. I could preserve beautiful things. Architecture. Integrity. Self-worth. And some things, once restored, couldn't be diminished by anyone's assumptions. 6 months later, I sat on my deck watching sunset over the Pacific. The house glowed in the golden light. Every restored detail perfect. Every preservation choice vindicated. My phone buzzed. A text from Elena, my property manager. FY, just declined another purchase offer. $6.8 million. Should I add them to the list? I smiled and typed back, add them to the list. This house isn't for sale. Not for $6.8 million. Not for any amount. Some things you build aren't about money. They're about proving to yourself what you're capable of creating. And I'd created something extraordinary. Not despite my family's dismissal. Not to prove them wrong. But because I knew my own worth. And that was something no one could sell. Not even for $5.8 million.